check you out with your wavy hand.
Are you two checking each other out this morning? This is what's happening.
Always, Naga. Always. Charlie and I are always checking each other out.
There you go. There's the headlines tomorrow.
I feel like I'm blushing. I feel like I'm blushing.
Those are the headlines tomorrow. Well done.
14 minutes past 7 is the time now.
All right, let's cool this temperature down, shall we? Now, after Labour's disappointing results in the local elections last month, Sir Keir Starmer admitted that his party needs to change.
So today he will be setting out Labour's plans on how to reunite the country's post-COVID in an effort to regain support. Let's speak to the party's chair, Anneliese Dodds, now. Very good morning to you, Anneliese Dodds. What's the problem?
Good morning. Well, the problem is that we have so many opportunities for our country. If you think about the green and digital future, for example, but those opportunities aren't being seized. That's why we're launching today Stronger Together, which is a roadmap for making sure we benefit from those opportunities. And we really learn from what our country has done during this pandemic. Obviously, it's been a dreadful time for so many people, but it's also shown that we can be stronger together. It's shown how neighbours have been able to work together to support elderly people, shown how our businesses have been able to work with trade unions, with the Welsh Government to create ventilators in really weeks when it normally would have taken months or even years. We've shown what we can do together. So this review, this roadmap, will be putting those principles into practice. And as I say, facing up to those big opportunities that we're just not seizing right now as a country.
Isn't the problem that you can't win elections?
Well, it's certainly not true to say that, I'm afraid. You look at Wales, where Labour had the best results that we've seen since devolution. You look at the fact that Labour now overwhelmingly is represented for our metro mayors, the first female metro mayor ever, and so many of them being Labour up and down the country. You look at the fact that Labour made gains in places like Worthing, where until a couple of years ago we hadn't had a Labour councillor for 41 years. Clearly we do have a mountain to climb in some parts of the country. We really need to build that support back up, and I'm really determined that we use this process to be speaking directly with people, learning from them about the challenges facing them, but above all, as I say, learning about what's gone well during this crisis when people have come together, and we need to build on that spirit of togetherness.
Can I just be clear then? So you're heading up a review into Labour, and your starting principle is that you don't have a problem with winning elections. Is that the principal starting point?
Our review is into policy, so it's a policy building exercise.
Yes, but you create policies in order. What do you create policies for? To win elections.
Finish. At the same time as that, we obviously do need to learn from the results that we've just had, and we can't paper over them. You know, I stated just a moment ago the fact that Labour had made some breakthroughs, but no question about it, there were parts of the country where we've been losing support, not just at the last elections, but indeed for a number of elections. And we need to be speaking directly with people, understanding their concerns, listening to them. That's what I've been doing over the last few weeks, understanding why they might have turned away from Labour and making sure that really the policies we set out actually match their lives and their concerns. And I mean, we've been trying to do that this week, for example. You look at the catch-up plans that the government has set out, you know, about £1, I think, per pupil. Well, we talked directly to parents up and down the country, and they said to us what they were most concerned about is the fact their kids have been away from their friends for such a long time. Of course, they're worried about their progress educationally, but they're worried about that social contact too. That's why we set out that programme for breakfast clubs up and down the country for every child, not just for a few kids, for every child. And it's that kind of policy that this roadmap is going to be focused on, speaking directly to where people are and their concerns.
So, OK, so let's talk about that. For example, you brought up the issue of catch-up, the cost of catch-up learning. Can you be absolutely categorical that were you in power now, that you would be giving the total, which I think is estimated at 13.5 billion, to the catch-up funds to help families? And that is in your list of, you want to, I think, item 5 was a future where families come first. Education's part of that. So can you categorically say that you would come up with 13.5 billion? The government has come up with 1.4 billion.
Well, we set out those plans because actually,
sorry, was that a yes?
Institute, it is yes.
So you would have come up with the total figure.
Sorry, I'm just going to explain why we set out those plans. It's because bodies like the Institute of Fiscal Studies, which is, as you know, an independent body, they've shown how failing to get a grip on that catch-up, to get a grip on mental health and social development for children, that will cost our country billions upon billions upon billions in the future. That is why we committed to an expansive programme of catch-up. And quite rightly too, it's an emergency programme for 2 years that we would be putting in place right now if we were in government, because we would be putting our children first. Unless we do so, as I said, we will have all of those costs stacking up for the future.
Okay,
because
I'm just trying to crack
who've
through.
not had that social development and
Forgive me, I'm
educational
just trying to crack through 1 or 2 items so we make progress. So can I be absolutely clear? You say you would have funded it to the tune of 13.5 billion. You said extensive. So that number, that's a yes, is it, to that number if Labour in power? Just straightforward, is that a yes to that number?
Well, if Labour were in power right now, we would have that emergency catch-up programme.
13.5 billion, that's a yes.
With the figures that she set out for it,
right.
And quite rightly so, because failing to do so will cost our country enormously. It's what the government should be doing right now, frankly.
Can I ask you another one?
Sadly, they're letting our children down.
Try and look through your list of the roadmap. It says item 3, safe and secure communities. I'm curious about, in relation to Grenfell and what's happening now in relation to buildings and the costs associated that many leaseholders are having to endure. Would a Labour government, would you commit to paying all the costs associated with the buildings works that are going on now, including the amounts of money that people have already had to stump up? Would you commit to that?
So I think, with respect, that's a slightly, sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but it's a slightly confused question, because there are a number of different costs associated with this. We have set out plans to ensure that we don't have the current situation where leaseholders are effectively prisoners in their flats, where they're unable to move because they previously had promises that there would be some kind of support around the removal of cladding, and that support has simply evaporated. We've set out plans for that previously. People can go and have a look at them, certainly from what our discussions have revealed, particularly with leaseholders, but with the general public more generally.
Okay, Anneliese, can I just ask you, because you'd be aware,
they're concerned about this too.
Our time is limited here. Let me try and put that question a bit more clearly, if you think it's vague. Would anyone under a Labour administration be out of pocket because they live in a block of flats that is deemed to be dangerous?
Well, we don't want to see that.
Now, I know you don't want to see it, but can you commit to it?
Well, we'd set out those plans previously. I can't remember
every
single dot on every single I and cross on every T, but this isn't just about saying, for example, if what you're driving at is, for example, that government should be facing up to these costs, because we've seen businesses, unfortunately, who failed people previously around this cladding, who installed unsafe cladding previously, simply not supporting the removal of it now as well. So it's about making sure there's accountability with those businesses, which simply has not taken place until now. And it must do, because otherwise we will see future scandals where, quite frankly, people are made unsafe and potentially ripped off as well.
And just timeline, when's the end of your review? When will we know the result?
So obviously this process will be developing policies for the next manifesto, but we want it to get cracking, obviously, right now. We're starting the first steps by drawing together those examples of what Labour's already doing in power, where we're seeing so many cases of showing that we really are stronger together, that we can deliver those
it was just a timeline I was after.
That's happening right now. That's happening up to Labour Party conference. You asked for the timeline, so I'm giving you it. That's taking place right now. We'll be developing interim proposals for next summer, and then we'll be working on those through the following year. Of course, we could see a general election that's happening up to Labour Party conference. You asked for the timeline, so I'm giving you it. That's taking place right now. We'll be developing interim proposals for next summer, and then we'll be working on those through the following year. Of course, we could see a general election taking place earlier than that. We need to be prepared for that, but that's the timescale that's set out right now. Doesn't mean that we won't be developing policy on other issues.
Sometime
of course, we're doing that all the time. And yes, currently, that's right. But as I said, that doesn't mean that we're not developing policy on other issues. We do that continuously. We need to do that as an opposition.
Anneliese Dodds, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you. We know the result.
So obviously this process will be developing policies for the next manifesto, but we want it to get cracking obviously right now. We're starting the first steps by drawing together those examples of what Labour's already doing in power, where we're seeing so many cases of showing that we really are stronger together, that we can deliver right now. We're starting the first steps by drawing together those examples of what Labour's already doing in power, where we're seeing so many cases of showing that we really are stronger together, that we can deliver those
it was just a timeline I was after.
That's happening right now. That's happening up to Labour Party conference. You asked for the timeline, so I'm giving you it. That's taking place right now. We'll be developing interim proposals for next summer, and then we'll be working on those through the following year. Of course, we could see a general election taking place earlier than that. We need to be prepared for that, but that's the timescale that's set out right now. Doesn't mean that we won't be developing policy on other issues.
Sometime
of course, we're doing that all the time. And yes, currently, that's right. But as I said, that doesn't mean that we're not developing policy on other issues. We do that continuously. We need to do that as an opposition.
Anneliese Dodds, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
24 minutes past 7 is the time. A vitally important step. That's
in I think there's a 16-week period, isn't there, by which time everything has to be in place. Let's call it week 17, and you've got a team going into the care home behind you there. I mean, are you expecting to have a kind of a document in your office saying who's been double vaccinated, who hasn't? Is that how it'll work? And then
for sure, there's some leeway, and we can use that time to encourage staff. But I come back to it. This is at a time where we're suffering major recruitment problems. All right, yeah. So I'm into withdrawing all the extra funding at the end of June. Yeah. So there's a whole load of financial issues behind this as well that the DHSC obviously hadn't thought through.
OK. Jeff, Richard, thanks very much. Jeff Butcher there and Richard Young. Thank you.
Time now is 7:32. That means it's time to get the news, travel and the weather where you are.
And Charlie. Bye for now. Good morning, I'm Sonia Jessup. A BBC investigations found black people are front of their policing approach. A highly decorated police officer for the weather with Kate Kinsella.
Good morning. Well, it's been a very uncomfortable night for sleeping with temperatures in the mid to high teens. Now we have...
And I'll be back in around an hour's time. Plenty more on our website. Now it's back to Naga and Charlie. Bye for now.
The rugby hold, there was lots of things that really helped along the way. Thank goodness I had my girls there who had young children as well. So I had a lot of support, thank goodness. And my other half, Jade, he was such a rock for me. And my mum and my family, they were great to have around, thank goodness.
You know what, Emma, and you're very lucky as well. But the message is, Mama, you got this. So even if you don't have all of that, you will do this.
Absolutely. Listen, I think this whole book just is a kind of to tell you that you have got this and you've got to go with your instincts. And we are all so different. Every mother does it so differently. And I don't think we should judge each other for that. I know that some people after their birth get up and get back to the gym and got their bodies. And I'm like, amazing. Others, we take longer, and you've got to listen to what is right for you. So go with your instinct and just, we have got this. It's what we're, made for.
Quite right too, Emma. Do you know what? A tea is ready for you whenever you like here.
Yeah, on the sofa.
It's going to be warm milk, 1 sugar. It's noted down. There you go.
There you go.
Sorted.
We may even get Charlie to make it for you.
Might yet happen.
Emma's new book is called Mama, You Got This. You are watching Breakfast. It's 8:59.